In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. He also created light, plants, animals, and mankind. Mankind greatly disobeyed the Creator, so the earth was flooded as a punishment.
But because the Creator saw that Noah was righteous, he and his family were preserved.
After the flood, all the nations of the world were born through Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. 9 generations after Shem, Abram was born. Abram, later known as Abraham, was chosen by the Creator to be the father of a holy nation, the chosen people.
The Creator made a promise that Abraham would be given countless descendants. They would have a blessed land flowing with milk and honey, but they would also be persecuted for 400 years in another land, then redeemed with riches.
That meant that Abraham, who was childless, would need a son. And the Creator gave him just that. Abraham's chosen son was Isaac.
Isaac's son was Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel.
Israel had 12 sons. Their 12 families became the 12 tribes of Israel.
Joseph, a son of Jacob, was sold by his brothers into slavery in Egypt. Though he was separated from his family, the Creator was with Joseph, and he elevated him to the ruler of Egypt, second only to the Pharaoh.
Through Pharaoh's dream, the Creator showed Joseph that a great famine was coming, so they spent years storing up food. Years later, the famine came, and many nations suffered. The other sons of Jacob came to Joseph, begging for help because they were going to starve to death. Joseph forgave his brothers, and helped them survive the famine. Eventually all 12 sons lived together in Egypt.
Their tribe grew quickly. Many years later, a new Pharaoh rose who didn't know Joseph, and he tormented the 12 tribes. Now the Creator saw this mistreatment, and remembered his promise to Abraham. So, the Creator raised up Moses, who became Israel's greatest prophet.
The Creator spoke directly to Moses, and gave him instructions on how to interact with his people and Pharaoh. Following the Creator's instructions, Moses led the 12 tribes out of the land of bondage by performing great miracles. The 12 tribes were in Egypt 430 years. The young nation of Israel was free, but they were in the wilderness.
Before they could enter into their beautiful promised land, they would first have to agree to keep the laws, judgments and statutes of the Creator. Their time in the wilderness concluded with divine predictions, foretelling their future, blessings for keeping their promises, and curses for breaking those promises.
This bears repeating. Their time in the wilderness concluded with divine predictions, foretelling their future, blessings for keeping their promises, and curses for breaking those promises. The agreement was everlasting.
After the covenants were made, the children of Israel finally entered into their promised land. They lived for some time without a king. During this time, the Israelites became friendly with people that the Creator warned were enemies. People who served false gods.
The Creator saw this, so he decided to let their enemies oppress them. Then Israel cried. And because the Creator loved them, he showed them mercy by saving them from their enemies. The Israelites were free again. Then they again turned to false gods. The Creator saw this evil, so he let their enemies oppress them. Then they cried. Then the Creator heard their cries and redeemed Israel a second time. Israel was free once again. Then Israel forsook the Creator, and the cycle continued. How many times did they turn to false gods?
Many. Many times.
One day the 12 tribes again decided to be like the other nations, but in a different way this time. They asked the Creator for a king. The Creator warned that their rejection of him would lead to many more troubles, but the Israelites didn't care.
So he gave them a king. Their first king was Saul, who eventually turned his back on the Creator. Saul was replaced by the second king, David, who was Israel's greatest king because of his relationship with the Creator. Their third king was wise Solomon, David's son. After Solomon died, unrighteous leaders took control and tore the nation in two. The two broken nations followed the evil practices of their neighbors.
The Creator sent his prophets to warn his people to turn from their evil. Alas, they wouldn't listen. The northern tribes, still named Israel, then served false gods until their nation was completely destroyed.
The southern tribes, named Judah, also forsook the Creator until their nation was destroyed. Because of their sin, the Creator allowed their enemies to totally destroy both countries. The curses had begun.
They would suffer greatly from unheard of diseases, heart disease, stroke, cancer, asthma, influenza, sickle cell. They would eat the worst food. Their children would oppress them. They would be unable to reason properly, unable to see the truth.
They would be scattered throughout the world, becoming slaves. They would be a mockery, looked down upon by the world. They would lose their history, lose their identity.
Their wives raped by their conquerors. Children kidnapped and enslaved. Working without payment. Hungry, naked, thirsty. Yoke of iron on their neck.
A cruel, unfamiliar nation from far away would conquer them, showing no mercy to the young or old. They would be unable to retain wealth as a people. Foreign nations would pillage their land. Cannibalism. Husbands against their wives and children. Wives against their husbands and children. Living a life in fear. They would be sent into slavery by ships.
The curses are a sign. The curses are a sign. The curses are a sign.
The curses are a sign.
The curses are a sign.
The curses are a sign.
Read the sign.